This is WMNF Tampa, WMNF.org, Community Conscience Radio.
The president calls for SCOTUS term limits, and both sides claim victory in Venezuela, and the World Autocratic League is threatening democracies. This is Community Speaks. I'm your host, Patro Mobili, and this is my opportunity to talk to you as this part of this public affairs program. It comes to you every Monday at noon, and there are two books that are making my summer reading list, and we're going to get lit about the right-wing money machine and how food is used as a political and an enslaving weapon. So we're going to talk a little bit of history today. And, of course, we got to keep it current with what's happening in the news and in the world right now. You can call me or you can write me at djwmnf.org. And we've been hearing a lot about the Supreme Court and how there's a lack of trust in that institution, as trust has been being diminished by institutions in this country from the right, and they try to take advantage of the vacuum that we're seeing. But President Joe Biden is thinking about his legacy, and that's going to be one of the main issues he's going to be talking about. And as this story picks up today, Biden is unveiling his plan for Supreme Court changes. And because we know the only way to remove a Supreme Court justice is impeachment, but it's hard to do. And I think there's like a 50-50 chance that it will actually happen if you just look at historical precedents. It's been like 16 attempts at impeachment, only 8 actually got convicted. So, that's kind of hard to do. So there's going to need to be some changes, and everybody in the political world seems to agree that this is one institution that needs to be looked at. Vice President Kamala Harris says that President Joe Biden has those proposals that Joe Biden has unveiled for changes to the U.S. Supreme Court will help restore confidence in the court, and that's going to take a lot. But the Democratic president is calling on Congress to establish term limits in an ethics code for the court's 9 justices. And Biden also is pressing lawmakers to ratify a constitutional amendment that would limit presidential immunity, which is very necessary given what we've just seen from the last president, the former president. But the proposal appears to have little chance of being approved by a closely divided Congress with just 99 days to go before Election Day. Biden is expected to speak about his proposals this Monday at the LBJ Presidential Library in Texas. Apropos choice, given LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, was the last president that chose to step aside, give up power, and not cling to it, as the country in 1968 was deepening its involvement in Vietnam. And LBJ decided not to seek a second term. Well, Joe Biden has done the same thing and has endorsed his Vice President Kamala Harris. And we can dip in to some of the excitement that has been talked about. There's a pollster who joined a second Zoom call, a Win with Black Men last night, and I dipped into that call, and there was some interesting asides that this pollster had, who had been joining the Zoom call, and gave people some ideas about how to move forward in this election. But given what the last president has done in terms of immunity, the changes at the Supreme Court that the current president is proposing are awesomely important. We'll delve into those, especially as I talk about the books on my summer reading list. But the school board here locally is suing the Hillsborough County Commission. So this also raises some of the issues of democracy here at the local level that has raised a lot of concern. There was a ballot initiative that was planned for this coming election, and Hillsborough County Commission decided to kick that proposal off the ballot and push it down the road, kick the can down the road for another 2 years. They just made an arbitrary decision because they had the power in their mind to do so, to actually throw a voter choice off the ballot here in Hillsborough County. And this was a tax proposal, a tax increase that would have raised teacher pay from appearing on the ballot in November. And it was estimated that the one meal tax increase, $1 for every $1,000 of assessed value, would have generated $177 million for teachers' pay. But the voters won't get an opportunity to decide if the Hillsborough County has its way. The school board has decided to sue the Hillsborough County Commission, and they've responded to that lawsuit. The school board, as I said, has sued them, and in its response to the lawsuit, the county said the school board failed to demonstrate how the statute in question gives it the right to determine when the referendum is placed on the ballot. So since this is a quote from one commissioner saying that since the statute at issue imposes a duty to call on the election for the referendum on the county commission, it also confers on the county commission the authority to exercise reasonable discretion to determine the date of such election. So the attorneys also wrote that the law only states that such election may be held at any time and does not give the school board the right to determine the date of the election. And the commission cited a case involving Hernando County, which said that a county commission does have the authority to choose when to schedule a ballot initiative. And I don't see where they're actually pointing to a statute in the state constitution, but that's up for you and I to decide if, whether or not at this point, if we want to have that ballot initiative on this ballot, or whether we're going to allow the county commission to have his power, have his way, and push it down the road. I guess the difference is they just won't raise that $177 million, and teachers just won't get their raise. And of course, the governor has weighed in. He has to weigh in on what happens at local level if he thinks he can politicize it, talking about, the people have had enough of taxes, but people have not had enough of democracy. They want the chance to decide. And this is all part, also, I think, it's all part of a global move towards authoritarian and autocratic governments. And there are people who in the United States are trying to get away with things that are not democratic and also put themselves above the law, which is why these constitutional proposals are all too expedient and all too important right now. And we talked about what we've just seen the president do. There's a book that is in my summer reading list called The Longest Con: How Grifters, Swindlers, and Frauds Hijacked American Conservatism, and paved way for someone like Donald Trump to come along and violate and take a license to steal, which has been part of a universe of conservative grifters who have used their followers as ATM machines. And he just came along and made himself part of that universe. But this is a part of Donald Trump's history of fraud. It has emerged as a new threat with this immunity decision from the Supreme Court of the United States. And this is a part of an interview from the author of the book, The Longest Con. And in an article called License to Steal, this is exactly what he's banked on in order to accumulate power in this country. He himself, before writing this book and interviewing about this book, calls it 45 a fraud and a con artist. And it isn't just his opinion, but an adjudicated fact proved by a New York court that found Trump liable for nearly $500 million for his decades of business fraud, or another court which accepted Trump's settlement of $25 million for years of defrauding customers of his fake Trump University, or the jury in Trump's criminal case in which convicted him on 34 felony charges for defrauding voters by paying hush money to an adult film actors. And what can still be hard to wrap one's mind around, however, is how a man so shamelessly criminal who openly treats his supporters in this way as while it's to be picked is still the GOP nominee for the third presidential election in a row. But perhaps it's just not so surprising, according to the author of this book, who wrote The Longest Con. Like I said, it's part of a long universe, a long history of grifters on the conservative side. This is a interesting book that I'm going to get the audio book for, but I just thought that this is a part of the summer reading list that is going to edify conversations. George T. Conway, who I believe that's the husband of one of the surrogates for the Trump campaign, has he wrote a contributing part of this book, The Longest Con, how grifters, swindlers, and frauds hijacked American conservatism. So we're still dealing with that. The Supreme Court is paving the way for it, but will changes come as a result of these proposals from the current president? It should focus, as the Democrats hope, will focus voters as they consider the choices. You have a real choice in this election. Looking at elections around the world, we're looking also, Venezuela has just had an election. We've been watching Venezuela, of course, that a lot of people are going to leave Venezuela if their violence breaks out, because both sides are claiming victory in yesterday's election in Venezuela. Of course, Maduro, the president, has claimed victory, so did the opposition. Who will prevail? There's already been called for the current president, Maduro. The election commission, which they say he controls, has already declared him the winner of the election. But we're going to see if the military gets involved. And it raises the possibility of, will the military shoot at his own people? A lot of countries are facing the possibility of that having to happen. We're seeing a sort of league of autocrats. I think specifically to the Sahel in Africa, who have joined together after military coups with mercenaries from Russia, who have made that possible to overturn the will of the people in those three African countries, Benin, Mali, and Sierra Leone, where military coups with undergirded firepower from Russian mercenaries. We're seeing Maduro in Venezuela turn increasingly to Russia for talking points and help. And so there's the possibility of many militaries being forced to turn the guns on their own people. And, I'm certain that if we continue to give immunity to presidents here, that could happen to a president so insisting on maintaining and clinging to power that he would use the military against the American people. 813-239-9663 is the number to call. Just wanted to get some of those stories out there, and we'll talk about another book on my summer reading list. But I see you're already trying to call here on Community Speaks, and you can call me, 813-239-9663, if you want to join a discussion here about some of the issues that have been raised. If you got some issues of your own, especially here at the local level, is democracy being subverted by pushing a ballot initiative that would have given teachers a pay raise by way of tax here in Hillsborough County? Give us a call, or you can write me, dj@wmnf.org. I'll read your comments on the air, dj@wmnf.org. So we got to go to Clearwater. Josh has been waiting on the line. See what Josh has to add to Community Speaks. Go ahead, Josh. You're on the air.
Yes. Good Monday to you.
Same to you.
I think the Supreme Court issue of term limits is a very interesting topic, and I I understand what's going on with the court system. We're all frustrated. I just wonder the flip side of that. If you make term limits, then doesn't presidential politics become all about judges and social issues? And maybe the founding fathers made it that way because they knew that, or you have a life sentence for that Supreme Court person, so maybe things don't change as fast. I was wondering, maybe if anyone else had comments like that, or I don't know. It's just something I think about. And
well, let's just deal with that one real quick, and then you can take it to the second point. It looks like that Biden is calling for doing away with lifetime appointments to the court. He says that Congress should pass legislation to establish a system in which the sitting president would appoint a justice every 2 years to spend 18 years in service on the court. He argues term limits would help ensure that court membership changes with some regularity and as a measure of predictability to the nomination process. So every 2 years to spend 18 years on the court, you think that would get us bogged down in just being about politics, or would that be a solution?
Well, I didn't know it was 18 years. That's pretty good. I guess. I'm not sure. It's just something I think about. As opposed to that they don't have term limits. And I guess my follow-up question is, I don't know about the states, but I was curious how anyone knew, like in Florida, do they have term limits, or are those lifetime? I was just curious, like, is there examples within the states?
Yeah, I think
maybe
they're elected.
Could learn from.
Yeah, I think they're elected. I vote for judges at every election. I don't know if it's Supreme Court justices, so I'm going to go and take another look at that. But I do know that the current court is stacked with Republican appointees, conservative appointees. Only one progressive and 6, I believe, conservatives. So that's very one-sided. And I think they do a lifetime, and that'll be a long time before we get a change on this court.
Yeah, I guess I just think my overall stance is like, yeah, you could have term limits, but maybe term limits for the judiciary branch is not a good idea. Even though, we don't like 6-1, like you said, or what's going on at the federal level. I can see plenty of anger and animosity to what's going on. What if it was the other way, and you wanted what's going on? And I don't know. I just think about that lifetime versus limits. Those are my comments. That maybe there's a different way to look at it.
Well, maybe there is. But I know lifetime, it is already political for certain, because the fact that the Republicans were able to change the rules so that President Barack Obama would not even get an opportunity to name his a Supreme Court justice when Scalia died. So that wasn't fair either. There needs to be rules. And of course, these proposals also include ethics rules and also that immunity decision for presidents. So there's a lot of change that needs to take place on the court.
Yeah, I agree with all of it. My brain does lead to, it seems reasonable. It's just like, I know when Biden puts someone in there, they're very young. They'll be around there for decades upon decades, and maybe someone put someone in there a few decades ago. I just think there is something about America over the long term that maybe change too fast isn't healthy.
I don't think 18 years is too fast. I think you're saying that you're up for discussion about it. So we're going to see what people say. But think about it this way. Justice Clarence Thomas has been on the court for nearly 33 years. And John Roberts, the Chief Justice, has served for 19 years. So if he left today, or Samuel Alito for 18 years. So if both of them left today, that would be changed. But 33 years is already a long time for one man to just sit in place and hold the line on one side. It seems like he's very political at times, and the ethics violations that we've seen around him, and he's been there too long.
Well, again, I don't know. I don't know if I agree. Maybe, yeah, part of my brain says, yeah, that's pretty obvious. But again, another part of my brain's like, I feel like the founding fathers maybe made it in that idea that, yeah, he's been there 33 years, but now, Biden puts someone on that just got there. Well, they still have to deal with the courts that, someone's been there 33 years and so on. I don't know if it's a protection or a hurt against the American people. I don't know. Anyways, with that, I'll hang up. But those are my brain. I'm on the fence.
All right. You're trying to make sense of it all and where it will lead. Understood. 813-239-9663. This is Community Speaks. We're always trying to talk about change, but we'll see, what ideas come out when it comes to this division of power, the Supreme Court. And, some people say you sit there too long, you're out of touch. And maybe that's part of what the problem is, or you just don't care about the impact of what you do. When you look at the immunity case, or when you look at Roe versus Wade, how, to get on the court, you lie and say it's settled law, and then you work to make it politically possible to overturn that law. It's going to be interesting to see what ideas come out in terms of responding to this proposal that comes out of Congress. So we'll see. 813-239-9663 looks like Jennifer, but I do thank you, Josh, from Clearwater. We're going to go to Spring Hill, see what Jennifer has to say about all of these events in the world and talk about change, talk about politics. Go ahead, Jennifer from Spring Hill. You say what?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I was curious.
It's very bad. So can you get a little closer?
Okay, what now? Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, we could a little bit. Go ahead. Yeah. Now we can't hear anything from Spring Hill. Jennifer, go ahead. Try again. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for you to go away, Jennifer.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, that's much better. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm really sorry. I'm just driving, and I'll just stop. And the reason I'm calling is I was just curious. You were talking about elections in Venezuela. I just wondered, have you ever been to Venezuela, Cuba, or Nicaragua personally?
Not personally, no.
Okay, all right. Do you know people that have been there personally?
Certainly, yeah.
Oh, you know a lot of people there. Okay. And you do know that there is, look at what Trump did, putting in, the opposition, putting in this thing, Juan Guaido. You know what that was. And yet we still see that this has been going on. I remember seeing a film, and I've seen it many times. I actually own it. But there was one, WMNF showed it, and the revolution will not be televised, but Chavez, about when he was taken over with a coup that was supported by the United States. And the thing is, Mabili, the United States government, people say it's different, but it's really a duopoly. They do the same thing. They both have sanctions on those three countries that I mentioned, Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela. I've been to all three countries. I have not seen the corruption that I've actually dealt with the government, went to government entities, and, it's like, it's not what we hear here. We hear this on this corporate news, and both parties support sanctions on these countries. Both parties are fine with the coups. Both parties are allowing genocide to go on in Gaza. They're sending our tax dollars there to Israel. They're sending our tax dollars to Ukraine to fight a proxy war with Russia. And they're accusing, the Biden administration has, arrested the who were three in St. Louis for being Russian agents. My political presidential candidate, Jill Stein, they still are memes out there about her being at a dinner table where Putin was going by and doing photo ops, and she's a Russian agent. And the U.S. Senate investigated her under Biden for 3 years and found they couldn't find any evidence. But it drains our financial resources because we don't take corporate money. These things are happening, and you talk about the SCOTUS thing. Why did McConnell get away with it? Why didn't the Democrats fight it off? Where's this whole codifying Roe? Obama could have done it in his first. He had like a phenomenal election. people were lined up down the block. I was trying to, let people know about Cynthia McKinney, but I mean, he won with an actual mandate, and they never did anything about codifying Roe. They never did anything about living wage. They just pretend like, they're fighting, and they're not getting anything done, and they still go to the same clubs and restaurants, and, I mean, Joe Biden is not a good guy. And, to really look into his history, you realize the crime bill, you realize he divided Iraq into 4 parts. He was sinister, and his best friends were like Strom Thurmond and Orrin Hatch. So, I mean, one party, and then here the Democrats say, nothing about the border, but they're stricter on the border. Obama was the deporter in chief.
Yeah, I've heard that, and you could talk about a lot of these things, and there's no difference between the two parties, and I don't know if any other party, whether it's the Green Party or whether it's the Communist Party or the Labor Party, will get in the White House if you don't have the mathematics. The status quo will rule. I mean, you just have the math is the math, huh?
If you get enough electoral votes, you're in enough states to have. Jill Stein's already got that. She's already passed the electoral vote that she needs.
I'm talking about the votes in Congress. I'm talking about who are going to be your allies to get anything done. I mean, you want change in policy.
You do have executive orders. And
executive orders is one way.
Trump could have, if he is president, let's give it to Jill Stein. She'll make a $25 living wage. I mean, see her website, what she would do. She would stop these sanctions. She would start getting a friendlier, actually the BRICS have more money than the G8 do now. And they're developing countries. They're making friends with these other countries, and yet we're resistant. We keep wanting to build military bases. We just put one in Japan now, a new one.
Okay,
that's what we're doing.
But Jill Stein, nor you, nor me, nor anybody else can ignore the corruption that you don't want to see coming out of Russia. I mean, Russia is a bad actor on the globe, going around turning militaries against their own democracies on purpose and waging war.
And we've never done that in the United States.
Well, I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I'm just saying this is what we're dealing with now.
They're the bad actors. I mean, come on. It's not the Russians. They're actually making friends around the world. I mean, I've traveled a lot of different countries and 4 continents. I can tell you that China, too, they're brokering peace. Russia and Ukraine had a peace deal, and Victoria Nuland, we went and blew that up. And as well as, Seymour Hersh found that we blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. I mean, this was Biden. So, I mean, when Biden says he doesn't, deport people or Trump's complaining that he isn't, actually, Trump deported less people. And he's saying that he would deport more when he actually, in his term, deported less. And whereas Biden and Obama deported more. So, I mean, it's like
who supported
one lies that they don't do it and one lies that they do it.
Well, I think you are cherry picking too. You know what I'm saying? Because we talk about a lot of topics, but let's look at just the whole deporter in chief thing. But who talks about dreamers? And those people at the border that Obama had to deport were mostly here because of the criminal statute. That was mostly people who had committed crimes in the United States and who were deported from the border. But people have an opportunity, had a greater opportunity. Well, there are a lot of people who come into this country, and they're not criminals. There are a lot of people who were brought here as children who are dreamers, and they have just as much a right to stay. And there are a lot of people who can't reach a port of entry. So there's an opportunity.
I'm for that.
Okay.
I'm not against that. What I'm saying is Obama was the first one to put them in cages, and Trump continued it. They continue each other's policies.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. I think you'd overstate, one person's behavior and understate the real threats in this world. You sound a little naive, though, when it comes to Russia and the problems that it's causing. They like to pit. They use Jill Stein to pit groups against one another in the 2016 election. Try to get into 2020, but our eyes were a little wide open. We're seeing them trying to send out disinformation about Kamala Harris right now. They're trying to use disinformation. They're lying. they're helping the conservatives in this country. But Jennifer, you can't cherry pick. You have to look. You have to look at the world with eyes wide open. Let's go to Spring Hill, see what Rob has to add to this conversation about the mess on the globe.
Hello,
Go ahead,
sir. How you doing?
Pretty good, Rob.
I was calling because I hear a lot of talk about the Democratic Party. And, the last caller kind of, to me, sounded kind of like a Marxist sympathizer. But that I'm not going to derail what I need to say here. The Democratic Party has been the party of Jim Crow, party of slavery, the party of the Confederacy. Before that, they were the Tory turncoats that were loyal to the crown.
But that all changed in 1964. I'm not going to let you get away with that, bruh, because in 1964, these Dixiecrats, they were the party of slavery. They were the party of white supremacy after slavery. In 1964, after the passage of the Voting Rights Act, these Dixiecrats became Republicans, and these are the segregationists. Strom Thurmond was no longer a Democrat. Strom Thurmond is a Republican. You don't need to call up here and give a whole bunch of disinformation, Rob, because you just want to run off at the mouth. I mean, this is ahistorical, what you're talking about now. And you can't look at the current Republican Party and pretend like everything you just said about the old Democrats is not true about the current Republicans. These people are beyond racist right now and are leaning in. In fact, they were so caught off guard by what President Joe Biden did, endorsing Kamala Harris to take the helm as candidate for this election, that all they have is a whole bunch of racist tropes to respond with, and of course, being a woman, sexism. So try again, Rob. That's not going to work here on Community Speaks. I only have an hour to go. I'm going to move on to see what somebody else has to add to this discussion. Presidential immunity, a Supreme Court that is paving the way for autocracy, and we see the Russians making certain that military juntas and autocratic strongmen, just for sheer naked power, continue to gain power in countries around the world, and paving the way for it. And let's not forget the bad actor in Silicon Valley that runs X, the company formerly known as Twitter, who's just violated his own rules of disinformation and put out an AI that fakes the voice of Kamala Harris. And, just a bad actor through and through. But we're going to go to Mango, see what Ron has to offer to this conversation. Go ahead, Ron. You're on Community Speaks.
Yeah, Mobile, how you doing today?
Good.
I guess you catching it from all angles. Mm-hmm. But there was something I was lacking yesterday. I didn't get a chance to say, and it's in reference to this here. And Simon Boss-Seneca had called and say, if somebody had somebody's child, what would they do? For one thing, I wouldn't let the persons that's involved in that walk into my country, like Putin walked into the country, Netanyahu walked right in here, criminal. So, for one thing, that wouldn't happen. Because that's a democracy, a real, true democracy. And because you sending all this money to Ukraine, but the guy you sending the money to fight against, he walks into the country. And then he want to meet with the former president after that. So that sounds all like...
Using my Netanyahu.
Yeah. Well, all of them. I mean...
because, the former president allowed Putin to come into the White House. It was his first visit after his first visitor to the White House. And they had some private meeting. And nobody knows what secrets were revealed.
I think he just repeated it, Mobile, when he came over here for something. I think I heard the two might have got jumbled, but it was still the same case because, first of all, we're giving money to Ukraine. Okay, the person they're fighting against comes to America. Then he meets with the former president for whatever reason. So if you film, scratch that. Then we move on to Netanyahu just came, and he want to talk to the former president, and he gets what the guy said, $45 billion a year, or something like that. So, and they're not good actors. That's what I'm concerned about. I mean, they need to clean that up on both sides of the aisle right there, because the money that they're wasting, like Kamala just got $100 million she could put that back into the policies that need to be corrected. Why they got to spend it somehow, and they don't spend it on they don't spend that on helping anybody. They just spend it on political jargon and back and forth, and they come out millionaires and etc. So I think that's an atrocity right there, because there's enough money in that they should be able to put that and flip it back into the public and help the party per se, if that's what they're so interested in.
I do know that Kamala Harris herself, is part of her job, what she did, Attorney General. She helped get police cameras on those cops and some diversionary programs for the youth, so that they won't have to spend more time in prison than they need to, so they can rehabilitate better in state. So, you got to give props where props is due. It's not just about money and power for all sides. There's some people who know what their job is.
Right. I'm notwithstanding that, I think that the overall thing is that, what I'm saying is a concerted effort in that respect, not identify her as any pundit or target of this, because, the same thing for Trump. Trump get in trouble, they give him a whole bunch of money, and he talk a whole bunch of junk.
He
helping with all of that. He don't even need it, like they say. He don't need it and whatever. But that's my point. When we got all these ills in society that can be helped economically, why isn't that happening during political seasons, where they take and put all that extra income out there that nobody knows even exists, man, and put it behind people and behind things to get things their way?
Yeah. And the longest con. Yeah, it's been going. They definitely.
The term limits and all that should be in there. I don't know what this other guy was talking about. He's confusing his brain. That don't make no sense, man. You retire, they give you 20 years on a job. I know people did 30. I do. I met a dude that the other day worked for the city of Tampa for 30 years. So, and he retired. He's glad to be retired. And he said they still treat him like crap after he walk around. They don't expect him to be able to walk around and be retired. So, it's a stigma both ways, and the stigma that they create is that a person is just comfortable in that spot, and that's not good. That's really not good. I don't care what they say. And that goes for local, state, and federal. Local, yes, state, and federal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We definitely have to watch it local. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one other thing I wanted to leave you with, I called yesterday about this guy that was a Marine, and he had a bad, atrocious, he got the same conduct I got as general. They wouldn't give me my honorable because it was general, because I had minor disciplinary infractions, which I just recently sent to the board to have it corrected, because it's 66 years and I don't have anything they could say I was some kind of, all of that stuff. I disproved it, and I sent that, gave me a DSM that read negative stuff, so everywhere I went, they tried me. That's why I've been complaining so much. I didn't know what, they had stuff in my records, like 3 DSM, and those are modalities. Somebody I was, all the slave stuff, like I was untrusty, I was always exaggerating, and stuff like that. And if you ever hear a conversation with me, they come like that. And people, they play with you based on that. So they have this information, and they use that against me. Now, they had the same information on this guy, okay, because he got a general. But I'm not him, and I'm not a Marine either. So he has really played. Like I was telling somebody today, how many people he killed besides that lady, because he shot that lady right in her head. And he a big old 6'6" guy.
Yeah.
The lady's about 5'5". He could have easily went a Marine tough guy and hustled her down. But they don't see that these people have problems too. I don't care how long you're saying. These people need to be, like my son said, deprogrammed about that crap, man, in your head. They go in there with that, and they come out even worse if they always had racism, idiosyncrasies, and stuff like that. I'm one to tell you, I'm a veteran. So, that's not checked. And then they allow that because they don't want you in there as a person of color. Is what I'm telling you. That's how they do that. They disqualify me so he can be qualified. And he should have been disqualified.
We worry about the military turning guns on the people, with the police. Definitely, and those body cameras are necessary. They just turned them on, and Sonia Massey was killed in her own home by a cop who couldn't tell the difference between someone having some kind of a mental breakdown and just saw a threat. And an unarmed woman with a pot of hot water. But yesterday was a day of vigil for Sonia Massey around the nation, including right here in Tampa. Yesterday at Curtis Hickson Waterfront Park, there was a vigil. And so But do this country want nationwide protests again against the rules, the lessons that were not learned by police after the killing of George Floyd? Go ahead, Stephen in St. Pete. You're joining here on Community Speaks. Good.
Hello. Anyway, yeah, I was listening to the lady that called earlier. I kind of agreed with about 90% of what she said. It was refreshing to hear someone that knew what they were talking about historically. And the interesting fact is, if you look at both parties, from 1861 to probably 1912, from Abraham Lincoln all the way to Theodore Roosevelt, the Republican Party was a progressive party. It had a great run, socialistic. When you look at some of the policies that were passed by many of those politicians that served in those administrations.
Except the socialists that we actually had, like Eugene Debs. Go ahead.
Well, no, he was jailed by Woodrow Wilson, by the way. Interesting. But anyway, the Democratic Party had a nice run from 1933 to 1968. Franklin Delano Roosevelt realized when he came to power, he told the oligarchs that had all the money, he goes, if we don't start spreading the wealth and I don't start instituting progressive changes in the economical society of America, they're going to take it from you. We're going to have a revolution. And FDR had sweeping changes that changed the United States of America. And I've always said this from basically 1933 FDR all the way through LBJ. More legislation was passed during those years that benefited working people, minorities, women.
Right, because of the Great Depression. I mean, they really had no choice.
Just those policies they did. And LBJ, I was 11 years old in 1968 when LBJ left the White House. During the Kennedy LBJ years, I was a kid, basically, and the legislation that was passed, like Medicare, like Medicaid, civil rights, many of the different programs, and many radical Republicans with the mindset still of Abraham Lincoln and Theodore Roosevelt, Thaddeus Stevens, Charles Sumner, voted with LBJ for Medicare. They wanted it for everybody. And most of the Democrats, which still, as you would say, Dixie Democrats that turned into Republicans later, voted against it. Even LBJ, when he signed the Civil Rights Law, he said, we've lost the South forever. And he was pretty much correct on that. But what I'm going to say in general, today, okay, when the Reagan Revolution happened, both parties served their donors. And in my opinion, when I look at both of the parties and what's been passed since 1968, which is really nothing, they serve a Reaganistic doctrine. And if someone asks me today, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, you know in your heart they're the same party. Because nothing, year after year after year, no matter who's in the White House, we still don't have universal health care. We still don't have universal dental care.
But we came a lot closer, and you can't say that the Democrats today represent Reagan orthodoxy, which only stood for trickle-down economics. That's the only thing I remember, except for this strength by armaments, and the dome of protection they were supposed to build or something in Star Wars. But the trickle-down theory didn't work. It was just a gimmick. They were never intended on giving any kind of redress to the poverty that was existing, raging through the 1980s. But you can't say that worked. Or that was picked up by both parties because, of course, we know that there are conservative Democrats, and I have a lot of issues with what I hear come out of their mouths sometimes, and they seem ahistorical, and it seems as if they want to get away from issues of poverty that they can't solve, and will sign on, especially in local levels, to anti-homeless ordinances that just push people around cities. So you don't solve problems that way, and nor the trickle-down theory. And I don't think that's all Democrats.
I agree with you on the trickle-down thing. In 2008, when Barack Obama came to power, and I had to hold one nostril back then when they put Joe Biden on the ticket, because I knew about the infamous career of Joe Biden being a right-wing Dixiecrat, and I'll get to that in a second. But Barack Obama,
run out of time. But
they controlled all three branches of the government, right? They could have passed. The Democratic Party had it in their hand. I voted for Obama.
Yeah, but how do you account for Joe Manchin, who would not go play along, but people and President Obama came in because the Republicans had tanked the economy. Do you remember 2007 economic crisis? We were almost in another depression. Yeah, Stephen.
I'm 208. When Obama had full power, we controlled the.
No, he didn't. He had a simple majority, but not where the rules had changed to. You need 55, 60 votes to get anything done, and he had to negotiate to get the Affordable Care Act. The math is just not mathing sometimes, with these people, even when they have the majority.
But anyway, just the Obama year to me was a disappointment. Okay, and then when you look at the Democratic Party when Joe Biden came to power, I knew just from my life, even when I was a child, that's how old this guy is. That even in Detroit union halls, my dad was a local 58 electrician in Detroit, Michigan. And if you ever mentioned the name of Ronald Reagan or Joe Biden back in the 80s or early 90s, you got your blank handed to you if you ever mentioned those names at a union hall.
So why do elderly people, like white elderly is supported Biden and probably won't support Harris in the same numbers?
Well, actually, if you had to get technical, Joe Biden, I mean, they're both right-wing here.
It's Scranton Biden.
No, but I'm just saying, like, Joe Biden, though, the bankruptcy bill that he did that was signed into law by Bill Clinton, that hurt people riddled with medical debt and college tuition debt. The crime bill signed into law by Joe Biden.
Yeah, that was 30 years ago. He wasn't president, and a lot of people were talking about me. Okay, let's go on to somebody else. Stephen, there's a lot of, we can go back and forth about history. I'm sorry, we just lost another caller. 813-239-9663 is the number to call if you want to join the discussion. But what about presidential immunity? What about a Supreme Court that is out of touch? What about what is happening right now? We could rehash and revise history, and but they're just not the same people that's sitting there today. And we have to wonder how we get into this mess. But when you look back over the career, if you want to talk about looking back over careers, we can see a lot of growth and a lot of backsliding. And there are a lot of disappointment. A lot of people were disappointed with Barack Obama, I'm certain. A lot of people were disappointed with Bill Clinton. A lot of people were, and I was one of them, because I think he caved to the orders of the day of, remember that infamous, the era of big government is over. That was just pandering to the right wing who, he no longer wanted to fight, I guess, after demoralizing him over what he was impeached for. But these people, it is easy for someone who feels like, there's no differences when you don't feel the policies or you don't feel the dangers. I feel the dangers of going backwards. And as we've heard Kamala Harris say, we're not going backwards. And that's the issue that some of us have to worry about when we look at, you're being pretty much disaffected by what each party or each individual is doing or the dangers that they represent. Jennifer, you're back. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. You kind of cut me off. You said cherry pick, and then you cut me off, and then you said don't.
The lines are filling up. Quickly, go ahead, quickly, because we got.
I am trying to talk as quick as I can. If you don't talk about me, I'll be good. All right. You said don't cherry pick. I said pick a topic, and you said, the immigrants. And so we were talking about it. And what I want to do is back up, because people can go to the Cato Institute. They can go to a lot of to find the actual deportations and who did what and which ones were criminals and which ones were not. And Cato Institute is not a liberal party, or it's not a liberal think tank. And then also, I just want a quick comment about the thing with Obama. You talked about the economy crash when he took over. He let the banksters off. I watched all the trials and the Senate hearings and everything else, and they let the banksters off, and people lost their homes. So there's a lot of bad stuff to say about Democrats. I'm actually surprised, especially a lot more forward thinking. But as a Green, we're suppressed by this government. We're suppressed by the Democrats. And you know what? They won't even give us. She earns matching funds, and Janet Yellen won't release them until sometime in August.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Mary, go ahead. You're from Dunedin. Go ahead. You say what, real quick?
Trickle-down economics was just them peeing on our head.
That's all it was trickling down, right?
Obama was cheated out of being able to pick a Supreme Court justice, which they're all crooked, or not all, but they need to be indicted, several of them for sure. And Trump got to pick Supreme Court justice in like days.
3 of them.
I didn't have enough time, so that's right now all I got to say.
All right. Thank you, Mary. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mala.
813-239-9663 is the number to call. I'm just taking a flurry of those calls because we got 5 minutes left, and I'm going to get on out and make room for us to get back to the music. It's the Music Monday. It's coming your way next with Landon Whalen and Victor. They're waiting, and I'm waiting on your telephone calls. Go ahead, John in Tampa.
Hi, Billy. I love your show. Great topic. I had to call in today because I'm tired of people beating President Obama up. And I like what you said about how President Obama saved the economy. Because when Bush left, the stock market dropped all the way back to 6,500 points.
Right.
And it hadn't been that low since 1965. And that man restored the economy. He saved the economy. And I don't know why they're hating on Obama so much. I don't understand it.
Neither.
And another thing you mentioned about the Dixiecrats, you're right about that. If you remember, Ronald Reagan, he went down to where Cheney and the civil rights workers were killed when he announced he was running for president. Ronald Reagan used to be a Democrat, and he switched over to the Republican Party after the Civil Rights Act.
Right.
So people need to wake up. So your real racist people out here, a lot of those people are those old Dixiecrats. Now they are Republicans.
Clearly, you hear it. Thank you for your call.
I really love your show. I've been listening to you over 20 years. And I just had to call in today because I'm just tired of President Obama being beat up. It's
just bashed. Sad. Yeah. Thank you, John. I agree. Thank you, John, for that.
Thank you, my Billy.
813-239-9663. We have to go eyes wide open, and that's what I just hope to do. We're going to see what Bob has. Palm Harbor is calling back. Go ahead.
Hi there. So
few minutes.
I love your show. So in my mind, there's no questions. We can't vote for the MAGA. They're really scary. But what has happened with all this kind of extreme politics is the discussion of what we need to have done gets kind of put aside. So even the Democrats are not doing a good job for us, even though I will vote for them. I will vote for them because they're the lesser of evils in my mind.
I mean, in that one sense, but there's this dilution.
Even about Obama, I hate this idea of iconizing Obama. I mean, there was a lot of mistakes Obama made. I mean, the solution to the crash, nobody went to jail. William Holden didn't prosecute anybody because he was a Wall Street banker. He was Attorney General. And he was African American. So let's not believe that because somebody is elected to office and they're African American, they'll do a good job.
Okay.
They're as prone to the same things as everybody else.
Yeah, that's true. Let's see what Mike in Sarasota has to add. Go ahead, Mike, real quick.
Yes, thanks for taking my call. I like your line about being eyes wide open. I noticed a lot of your callers have been complaining about the policies of Biden and Clinton, and they for being too corporate. And I think the emphasis seems to be that they think that Trump is going to be, controlled by the corporations too. Well, I have one question for you. Kamala Harris just raised $200 million in 1 week. I would bet you that a majority of that $200 million came from large corporate donors.
Well, maybe not. We'll see because, they have a way of funding both sides. So, because they want to.
It'd be very difficult for $200 million to have come in a week from small donors.
Yeah. I know that I was on a call, and these are everyday people who were chipping in because they saw that this was an opportunity that was handed to them. I'm going to go ahead and get on out and make room for us to get back to the music. It's the Music Monday. It's coming your way next here on your non-commercial radio station, WMNF. That's W member supported non-commercial FM radio. This has been Community Speaks. I'm your host, Patron Mobili. I'll be back next week. Stay tuned. Get a news update from our locally produced news, The Scoop, and then Landon Whalen and Victor's coming your way, getting back to the music with us, the Music Monday. Keep it tuned. WMNF Tampa.
I'm talking about a
Day Cafe every Tuesday morning at 10 on 88.5 WMNF. I interview environmentalists, politicians, social justice activists, academics, and other experts about topics that impact you right here in the Tampa Bay area.